Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm your host, Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, retail tech investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you the insights from some of retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is produced by Rethink Retail Network and sponsored by the following. Bluecore's software solution turns anonymous online shoppers into known customers and repeat customers. Bluecore enables retailers to personalize and optimize their email, SMS, and site marketing campaigns by delivering targeted and relevant messages based on where every customer is in their journey. Bluecore replaces annoying high-volume messaging with high-value messaging. Customers include Alo Yoga, Neiman Marcus, and Gap. Here's KPOV for week ending January 21st. If you were lucky enough to attend NRF with me, and hopefully you didn't get COVID, Lord knows I got it, and of course I was generous enough to share it with Paige, you would have noticed that there were a lot of things to do over that holiday weekend, just where you wanted to be in the Javits Center instead of away with family and friends. When do you think the NRF will move that event from Martin Luther King weekend to another weekend? Feel free to write in with suggestions. But some of the things that I found that were super exciting had to do with AI. Yep, it's all about AI. And what I loved, some things new, some things old. I'll start with the old first. Companies that I've worked with, Lily AI and Find Mine. Both improving the online experience. Then something new, Simulate, that actually personalizes AI online, which does not interfere with the speed of sight, which is super cool. Also, Firework launched something new, which is Ava, an AI-generated avatar to answer questions for you online that can also be repurposed to be a sales associate in store. Super exciting. Met with my friends from Drop It. They're the ones that make your OMS smarter. And then spent a whole lot of time with Narvar, understanding what the OG of post-purchase performance is up to now. They're actually helping to reduce return fraud, which was a big topic at this year's NRF conference. And finally, my friends from Predict Spring added voice search for sales associates to locate what inventory is available in store. How cool is that? And last but not least, a lot of companies out there using AI to improve customer service, from gorgeous to timely. And that's a wrap for NRF. On today's Retail Pilot, we have Chris Riccobono, the co-founder and CEO of Untuckit. While working towards his MBA at Columbia, Chris thought of the idea for Untuckit after speaking with lots of men about their fit problems, especially the length of their collared shirts, and began the business from his apartment in Hoboken with his Columbia classmate, Aaron Sanandres. It began as just a side job, but once Chris and his early customers realized that he'd solved a big problem in men's fashion, the business quickly grew beyond his expectations, and he now has more than 80 retail locations. Chris was a winner of the Entrepreneur of the Year 2018 award in New York, and in his spare time, he works closely with the Cancer Center and Atlantic Health System in New Jersey. He has also most recently launched another brand, Greatness Wins, and we will get into that in the podcast as well. Chris, pretty amazing story. And I actually found in doing some research, we probably have more in common, well, at least than I would have thought. And we'll get into that as well. But happy to have you, and congratulations on building a brand that many guys use as an essential part of their wardrobe, the Untuckit shirt. I think you created a name out there. I don't know what the term is for the name, but it's like Jell-O and Kleenex, where, oh, you've got the Untuckit shirt. Well, there's the Untuckit brand, which you created, and then there's those who have followed or copied what you have done. So congratulations for creating a moment in men's fashion
that has gone beyond a moment, but now is actually part of every guy's way of dressing and way of presenting themselves. So well done and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you. Hey, tell me,
long journey. So,
well, you're here, and that's good because many people that go on the journey at some point take the off ramp.
that's true.
Share with us just your journey, because from what I know, there seems to be some consistent elements from what I hear of what it takes to be not only an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur that has a success story. So how did you get into the space? What was your exposure to fashion, if any? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had nothing to do with fashion. I was in healthcare sales working for GE. I'd gone to Columbia Business School. I almost went back into finance in 2008. I was going to kind of start my career over at 30 years old. And luckily, the market crashed. And I was at the point that I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but you can't just be an entrepreneur. You have to have an idea, which I'm always telling young kids. But I wanted to get out of corporate America. I wanted to do something on my own, but I didn't have an idea that was working. And I was getting older. It was 30, was now in the corporate America for about 10 years. So I said, what do I love? I love wine. So, I'm running out of time. Let me start a video wine blog. At the time, no one was really filming much. Now everything's filmed. So I started this video wine blog and it didn't go anywhere. Probably had 10 people watching at a time, but it got me some confidence to be able to start a website, to be able to market on Facebook. This is back in 2009. I'd always thought about this shirt problem that I had. It was just more of an annoyance that I had to wear the same, out of spec J. Crew shirt over and over again because it fell at the right length. And I used to talk to people and everyone would say, I have the same problem, but I was too intimidated to start a fashion brand. And I always used to say, it must exist. It's got to exist. How does J. Crew, Brooks Brothers, all the big brands at the time not do this? They must do their research. They must ask consumers, are our shirts too long? And they all, came down to mid-thigh back in those days. But I actually came up with the name first. And that's what really made me say, I got to try it. I was wandering around. And I just thought about this Untuckit. And I called a few people and no one liked the name. In the fashion, I had a few, girlfriends who were in fashion and they're like, I don't know, let me ask my PR person or let me ask my friend in fashion. And no one really liked the name. But in my mind, if I came up with a sophisticated name, elevated name, I wasn't going to make it. Like I had to go completely different. I was trying to break in with something that hadn't been done before. And you remember today, everyone is starting a company, right? Because of Instagram and, there's 8,000 fashion brands.
Everybody's a company.
Yeah, back then it was Bonobos and then us. That was it. Direct, new e-commerce fashion brand.
And just to ground this is 2011 with your business school roommate or business school associate. You guys took this on and you went down this path.
Yeah, it was 2010 was the concept, and I began wandering the fashion district trying to get my J. Crew shirt replicated. And then I called my partner a few months later and said, have you ever had this problem? And he's like, all the time. It's a huge deal. We did a survey coming out of the path in Hoboken and showed him 3 pictures. Well, first of all, do you have the problem? 95% of men lit up. The second one was, what's the right length? Falling right in the middle of the fly. The excitement of what people wanting to talk about this problem was incredible. So we have some. Problem is, I didn't know how to make a shirt. I didn't know anything about how to make a shirt. I thought it was easy.
What I've heard is true, because you've referenced J. Crew now a couple of times. I'm sure Mickey would love to hear the story in total. But the shirt you were trying to replicate was actually a J. Crew small. So a missized J. Crew shirt became your prototype.
Yes, that's pretty funny. The other problem I had, by the way, when I would measure these shirts, I'd buy like 15 larges or 15 mediums from all the brands. Every brand shirt was the spec would be off. One would be this long, one would be this short, one would be, all over the place. And I was like, my idea doesn't work unless you are dead on every time. And the factories were laughing. Like, what are you, crazy? This is cotton. Cotton moves. I was like, well, I don't have an idea if you don't hit my spec, because if it's too long, it's like any other shirt. If it's too short, you can't wear it. Luckily, back then, fashion was struggling a little bit, so the factories were willing to work with anyone, and they wanted our business. But that was probably, looking back, the reason why this has never been done. And we have to pay, much more per shirt to have 100% inspection to make sure that you hit it every time, when I don't think other brands thought that could be done. But so I brought my partner on, and I tried to learn how to make a shirt. And we made some of the worst shirts you could ever imagine. I mean, these things shrunk in half. I didn't know anything about pre-washing shirts and shrinkage. And I remember getting 1,000 shirts in, every button unraveled. You peeled one, and then I was like, oh my God, they didn't tie any of these off, but we had to sell them. So we sold them with a proactive email that your buttons are going to fall off. I mean, it was because what you know this, but I didn't realize that fashion is complicated. I mean, making product is a long process of technical. When they told me that you need a technical spec expert and you need a pattern maker. Yeah, I didn't know. What do you mean you need all this? I thought I would just tell you this is the shirt I want. And so we struggled, but at the time we raised to launch a brand. We raised, I think it was, now I'm forgetting the story. I want to say 50 or 150,000, but essentially nothing. And because we couldn't raise money off the idea of a shorter shirt, people were laughing at that idea. The people, my dad's friends who had money who could invest are like, what are you talking about?
I can almost imagine like that initial pitch, and would love to talk a bit about raising capital, because obviously you've gone from starting a company with the name Untuckit, and as you just said, going to guys and they go, what? You want me to put money into a company who's building a shirt that's short?
Yeah.
See ya. It wasn't even like come back to me when you've sold a few. It was just probably see ya.
Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. And so we got some buddies to put 5K in here, 5K in there. And we launched.
And this is when? Give me another update on dates.
This is 2011, June.
Okay.
We launched, and we had no money to market. So we hired a PR firm, and that's all we did. We did PR. So it was very, very slow growth. But one thing that was common, that we were getting these long paragraph emails of thanking us, or saying, I wish I came up with this, or like, you're like, wow, this is truly needed. Problem is, we were making such a bad shirt that we knew that it wasn't going to last if we didn't fix the problem. So fast forward, we just kind of hung around. I was working full time. My partner was working full time. We hung around for about 2 or 3 years, and we said, all right, we got to use our last 25,000 and market. Like, we just got to see what happens. So we called up Boomer and Carton, which was a New York radio show. It was the only thing we could afford. And we told the guys we wanted to do radio ads, and they're like, well, Chris, it's going to take, $100,000 and, 4 or 5 months to start seeing traction. And we're like, we have 3 weeks and we have 20 grand. And on the day we ran that ad, we just 1,000 people to the site. And now these are radio guys. Your marketing at the time, no one did that. Market fashion on radio. You can't see the product. But shirts designed to be worn. Yeah. All you had to say was shirts designed to be worn untucked, which, by the way, that simple tagline must have taken a year to come up with, shirts designed to be worn untucked. And it just resonated. So we did that. We then did an airline ad. Once again, not one brand. It was only watch companies and fragrance companies that were doing airline ads. But it was the only thing we could afford, $15K for an airline ad. And we made $45K. And we're like, gosh, this is incredible. Like, we spend, we make, we spend, we make. And it was all about shirt. It wasn't anything other than shirts designed to be, you have a problem, your shirts are too long, shirts designed to be worn untucked. So in 2000, we've sold out of our shirts. We had to make them in New York City for like $60 a shirt because we couldn't get shirts fast enough. And in fast forwarding now, but in 2015, even though many were predicting that brick and mortar would be done, we knew it wasn't, because 70% of our customers said they would not buy unless they could touch and feel the product. And by the way, our demo was 25 to 75, right? Almost evenly distributed. Anyone who wanted an untucked shirt, whether you were old, young, fashion forward, not fashion forward, were coming to us. So we opened up in Soho, a pop-up, 3 months, and I worked it for 3 months. I must have hugged 6 people a day, actual hugs, like guys coming in, thanking me, hugging me. We served scotch. It was very simple, not an over build out, very basic. People wanted to come in, try on the shirt and buy it. And then they would all be talking to their buddies about the idea. So we had a big year that 2015, and then our growth just took off from there. We opened up 5 stores in 16 and then 30 and 30 or something. So going into the pandemic, we had about 90 stores. I can keep going. I just didn't know if
Yeah. Just one of the things that, knowing your background, which is similar to mine, and I'm an entrepreneur at heart as well, though not as successful as one as you, but I grew up playing a lot of sports, and I played team sports, but my favorite sport was tennis. And
really?
I liked it because it was an individual sport and I didn't have to rely on anyone else. I either won or I lost.
Right.
Doubles, another story. But, I wonder to what degree you would give credit to growing up as an athlete, specifically with a focus, and I know you played college tennis, specifically with a focus on tennis, where it puts your butt on the line every time you play. How do you see that skill set or mindset being part of helping you be successful as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I always tell young kids, I mean, we know this, athletics is such an important part of learning to be resilient, hardworking, all the skills you learn as an athlete. And obviously in individual sport, you're out there alone. It's only you. It's a lot of, you don't have anyone to lean on, even the good times or the bad times, which is being an entrepreneur. It's a lonely journey. It's a scary journey. You lay up at night. No one understands it unless you are an entrepreneur. You can think you understand it, but when you're basically, if you fail, you have essentially nothing. It's a scary feeling. So I attribute playing sports in general a lot to my success, but also just becoming resilient. That's the main word that you need in the world of being an entrepreneur, because there's going to be so much pain along the way and so many setbacks. Now you go a step further into fashion. This. I mean, it's one problem after another. So yeah, I definitely think it helps.
So hearing your story as well, probably 2019, pandemic hits. Like most entrepreneurs, we do plans and we plan for everything. Worst case scenario, I'm down 20 and I'm still in business.
Yeah.
But here you're going into a third set and the coach takes away your racket and says, good luck. What the hell happened? I mean, how you've got this shirt that was made to go out and present yourself better, and now no one's going out.
Yeah, we used to talk about
at that point in 2019, and how did you survive? Which was nothing short of, I would think survival would be impossible.
Yeah. It's amazing though, because when we used to meet with investors, they'd always say, let's talk about what could go wrong. What could go wrong? A recession. It's always a recession, a horrible recession. Well, we'll still be there. Our stores will be open. People have to go to work during a recession. Our shirts are affordable. It wasn't possible where they're going to shut you down. You're not going to have stores that are open, and then you're not going to be allowed to go wear those clothes. So you're going to just wear sweatpants or, a t-shirt. That scenario wasn't possible, so you couldn't prepare for it. Crazy thing is we had 15 letter of intents coming in on February of 2020. In other words, we made it. I did everything I set out to do and achieved it. I developed the brand that in 2019, every single major billion-dollar brand copied us. I was a healthcare guy, and now everyone's copying us for fashion. I don't even consider myself a fashion guy to this day, which is funny. And we opened up the stores. We had opened 2 in England. We had a bunch in Canada. We were going to go throughout Europe. We were the fastest growing men's brand. We were the most talked about. We were ready to sell at a very great high number. And then we shut it down in March of that year, or February of that year in 20. Fast forward 3 months, and we were on the phone with a bankruptcy attorney about going bankrupt, which I didn't even know, it means you own nothing. Someone buys you, says bye, leave. Not only do I not make the money I was going to make, I don't have a salary. And I was, what I mean? And I just bought a house. We did raise money just to go back. In 2016 was the first time we ever raised money. We put $8 million on the books through Kleiner Perkins. We took some money off, luckily. But so at the time, just one other unique thing about Untuckit is our competitors were, I think I'll just say, I think Bonobos had raised about 200 million when they were doing the revenue we were doing at 8 million. So it was pretty incredible story. Like not only that, I owned a lot of equity because we had somehow avoided this private equity route that all companies get into early on. But yeah, we were going bankrupt and there was no way, you remember this, you turn on the news and we don't know when this is going to end. We have no idea. It just kept going on and going on and going on. And somehow we survived. We sold t-shirts and we sold polos. We raised debt. The day he said you got to go bankrupt, I called my partner and said, we can't. We are the perfect post-pandemic product. We are the product that people are going to go back to, not a suit and tie, but we have to survive. How do we do it? We called all of our landlords. Everyone but one was great. We called all of our factories. We owed them at one point, $16 million, massive amounts of money. They knew to stick with us. They knew we were going to come around. And we did. We had an amazing 2022, became profitable. Everything shifted. As you know, it was all about growth, growth, growth. We pulled back marketing and we became profitable and we didn't, decline because our brand was so strong. As you know, a lot of these companies, some that we track publicly that we all know that grew real fast, got these huge valuations. It was all based on inflated marketing. So when we pulled back, we were nervous, but we had to because we had no cash and we became profitable, which was huge for us. And then today, problem with us right this second is we still do need to shore up our balance sheet. I mean, we're still suffering from the effects of COVID. We don't have a ton of cash. So we got to raise money. We got to refinance. We couldn't refinance. Well, you talk about the pain of the entrepreneur. It went from COVID into the worst economic environment with inflation and interest rates. So we're 4 years into this. It's not over. Like there's still pain, because you can't just go raise money. You can't just go refinance. We pay a lot in interest, but we're still fighting. The exciting part is we're opening up 20 to 25 stores this year. I don't think anyone is doing that this year. We love brick and mortar. It's harder to acquire online. So our stores are almost all profitable. We know how to do it. Our customers love it. We're not in 8 states. We're going to hit all those. We think we'll have, 150, 175 stores. So we're excited again. We're going into wholesale. Never have done wholesale. Once again, very few brands at our size have not done wholesale. Usually it's done the opposite way. You know that very well. We're going to go into wholesale. There's a ton of intrigue from independent wholesale across the country. We're getting a lot of requests to license other products because our brand strength. We are going into Mexico. We're opening in Mexico City. We're going into the Philippines. So
just on that note, when you say you're looking international, I think you dabbled a bit. You maybe still have stores in London, but are you licensing these joint venture, or this is you?
Europe will be us. Places like the Philippines will be licensed. Mexico City's like a rev share. It's a great deal. And we think we can open up a lot of stores in Mexico City. So it's all a mix. Places like if we go to Dubai, it will be franchised, like places that we don't want to deal with it. But for places like Europe, where we feel very comfortable, our head of retail lives in England. So we have representation over there. So it's a very exciting time because we're going to begin that fast growth trajectory. A lot of players dropped out, throughout the time. I find e-com very interesting right now. The way I describe it is like, first of all, no one knows. We're all new. We're all watching this unfold. You had these initial 10, I'm making the numbers up, 10 or 15 companies come in pre-COVID, and they were stealing from the classic companies, the Vineyard Vines, the Brooks Brothers, the J. Crews. But at one point, a guy had 8 stores to shop in. He went to a mall. There were 8 men's stores, call it 12, whatever the number is. Then there were 30. And that, then over the pandemic, every human being decided to start a brand. Now there are 100, let's say, 200, 300. And by the way, they all make nice clothes, because making nice clothes is easier than ever, these days for a variety of reasons. It can't last, right? We might get to 20 million, but then there's going to be 20 others at 20 million or 30 million. The ones that get north of 200, are a handful, if that. The ones that are north of 200 profitable, that even goes less. So I think eventually you're going to see that a lot of these companies, once they realize they have to be profitable, they can't be, because you got a market. You compete with the 900 other companies out there. So it's going to be a unique time the next few years. I love where we are, and it's very exciting. But yeah, definitely quite a ride. I'm looking forward to the next few years, though.
I like your point of view on stores. I think you're very focused on opening up efficient stores, both in terms of size, productivity, but also what you're spending to build the stores. Can you share any numbers, any types of dollars per foot, just to give some idea on how efficiently you're looking at the space to make sure that you are profitable?
Yeah, that's kind of what makes us so unique, and why most companies, the ones we know, once again, are cutting back on stores or opening up 3 or 4 a year. And where people think 25 stores, you're going to open up 25 stores. Well, I have 90 of them that are profitable. So I know what we're doing here, but I don't like to share the exact numbers, but I will tell you, I am just a strong believer. The days of, the beautiful store, who knows what Polo used to spend. And by the way, that was spectacular.
I know. I can give you that number. More than yours by times 2.
Well, I look at the one on West Broadway. It's not Polo. It's Ralph Lauren or whatever it is. I mean, oak everywhere and spectacular. And that's their brand. But you just can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. And there's days of these 5,000, 6,000 square foot stores and 250 of them. I mean, that is a recipe for a disaster, and it plays out every time. There's 2 things that we do. 1, 12 to 1,500 square feet. That's where we want to be. Inexpensive build out. It's the man shopper wants efficiency, wants productivity. He wants a glass of scotch. That's what they want. They want to know they're getting the right fit. They don't need to look at the ceilings. By the way, I do believe that women are completely different. I'm not involved in that, but I do think you need a store that's much nicer looking. And don't get me wrong, our stores aren't bad looking.
I've been into them.
It's about efficiency. It's about experience a lot more than, and by the way, the numbers just don't work otherwise. You can't be profitable then. And, so we love it. It's such a great way to acquire customers. It's also marketing. If you get a cheap store in New Mexico, let's say, it's just a billboard, for a few grand, so I don't need to do $3 million in every store. I'm happy with 350 because I make $100,000 off some of those. So most people don't think like that. They think about, you need a store that does, north of $1 million, and to me, it's all about acquiring customers. And how do you do it? Do it any way you can. And if it's less expensive opening a store, then open a store. But listen, it takes a long time to learn how to run a store efficiently. Staffing, I mean, you can make a few wrong decisions and you're going to be, in the red.
Yeah, there's, just from my experience with stores and real estate, typically you're looking at $200 to $300 a foot to build out a store. Obviously, the bigger the store, the less expensive per square foot, because you can bring down the costs over more square footage. For example, the bathroom that has to be in the store, divide the bathroom by 5,000 feet versus 1,500 feet. It's much more expensive in the 1,500 foot store. But yeah, there's a big range. And I agree, you can do things really well, put the money in places that are really important to the customer versus everything, because everything is not important to the customer. So good on you for looking at real estate the way you do and also being profitable in that many locations. And it probably opens up a lot more opportunities based on the way you are thinking about and looking at stores in terms of its contribution to bottom line and just creating brand awareness.
I also think it's interesting. I actually think we're going back towards the old days, like meaning if we went, okay, retail's got brick and mortar's going away, only e-com. And then it was, okay, you got to focus on e-com. Even when you have brick and mortar, you got to be an e-com company. But now, because of how hard it is and costly to acquire a customer, I do think brick and mortar is going to become even more important over the years, over the next few years. So I think it's going to be stronger than ever. Now, there's no question I'll make the number up. 10% of human beings will never shop in stores anymore. If 20% of people only shop online, now it may be 30. And those are people who learn to use the computer. These are typically older people who were not comfortable buying online. They had to, and now they don't want to go to the mall. So traffic will forever be, we're never going back to pre-2019. I don't want to say never, who knows down the road, but in the near future. But that doesn't mean that the other 70%, those people are going to malls. I always laughed when people are like, brick and mortar's gone. Brick and mortar is a hobby. It's going to a mall is a hobby. It's something you do. You do it on vacation. Everyone walks down the main street and shops. You do it with your mom as a kid. You go for lunch at the mall. You walk around the mall, and you do it. You meet your buddy at the mall. You meet your friend at the mall. It's something to do. It's never going away, right? It's going to be there forever.
I also think too that I'm a strong believer in brick and mortar, but I believe in more stores that are smaller to create those points of contact with the brand versus fewer stores that are bigger. And I think that it puts the pressure on a retailer to use their inventory in a smarter way. The store experience in that smaller store has to be more efficient. Technology becomes that much more important. But I'd rather have, if you had 6,000 square feet, I'd rather have 3 2,000 square foot stores than 1 6,000 square foot store. And
I agree.
If you have the problem in those small stores that it's just too small and we're doing too much, that's a good story to tell your board. Yeah, we have these 40 stores that are doing, $900 a square foot. I wish I built them bigger. Those board members are going to want more guys like you on running their companies.
I don't get the huge store, the massive store down in Soho. I mean, listen, it feels good. I always talk about the entrepreneur of feeling good versus like the entrepreneur. He opens his company and the first thing he wants to do is get a beautiful office, right? Then he wants to raise money because he's supposed to be talking to private equity. So he raises all this money. Then he hires a CEO, versus just, I know it's a little different, but it ties in. Like the big store just makes you feel good. This is a whole different world out there. It's such a battle. There's so much competition. There's so many people opening stores. There's no need for a massive store anymore because you're only setting yourself up for potential failure down the road.
Yeah. It's not about ego. It's about efficiency. And I think that's how you become successful. Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Predict Spring is a global point-of-sale platform live in 22 countries. The platform includes mobile POS, endless aisle, fulfillment, inventory management, and clienteling, creating a true omni experience for customers and associates. Predict Spring powers Suit Supply, Converse, Lovesac, Decium, Janie and Jack, and Bouclair. Breakfast helps brands
like HelloFresh, Perfume.com, and QVC increase revenue across Meta and TikTok by creating hundreds of user-generated content video ads. The Breakfast Creator Network, with over 5,000 strong, produces original content that is authentic to each platform and built to drive performance, all done in as little as 3 weeks. Check out breakfast.io. That's BRKFST.io.
I want to talk a little bit more about marketing because I think you, like a couple of others I've had, I don't know if you know Ryan Babenzian. He founded Greats and now he's out there with Jolie. Super smart guy when it comes to marketing. But you, like him, you found different ways to market. And I think one of your secret sauces, if you will, is your connection with athletes/celebrities. So you probably have one of the greater cadre of brand representatives, athletes, ambassadors, whatever you want to call them. How did you find these guys and who are they?
Well, with Untuckit, I was always torn on ambassadors, like paying for an ambassador, because you can't really see it moving the needle. Like it goes back to Instagram. When these guys post, it's not like you get a rush of people to your site, but it really helps with credibility. So our first ambassador ever, funny enough, was a guy named Brad Richards. At the time, he was the captain of the Rangers. He had just come in on a huge deal. So he was very well known in the hockey world. But we brought him on for a small equity deal because no one knew our brand. So my thought was that if they see a Ranger, they'll just say, okay, this must be legit. So I think there's a place for an ambassador early on in a brand so you get credibility. Then when we had some, money and we were giving up a little more equity, we brought Drew Brees on. To me, that was for content. So content just to have something different and talked about. We brought on Drew Brees, and then we brought Wayne Gretzky on. And by the way, they were both investors and ambassadors, which I think is important because you want them tied to the brand. When we opened in Canada, we brought Wayne on. So that was great. Then for my other brand, Greatness Wins, that I founded with Gretzky and Jeter and Misty Copeland. That's a huge difference, a founder versus an ambassador. I mean, Derek Jeter and I talk every other day about the brand. He's calling me about, the women's sports bras and how they fit. Like he's involved in every aspect.
I hope he's not your fit model for that.
No. But when the customer realizes that, it makes a huge difference versus, let's say Blake Corum, who we did an NIL deal with. Blake will be on to the next brand. That's just the way it works. Your ambassadors go. So founding a brand, being a founder is a huge difference from perception. But, it's funny. I still am very cautious. You'll see we did one NIL deal so far, and we're an athletic brand. But if you look at these other brands,
NIL is an acronym for
name, image, and likeness. Name, image, and likeness.
Thank you. Just for us, so we know and everyone else.
Name, image, and likeness, which is really the college kids. And a lot of brands now, you actually funny you said that. I love partnering with ambassadors, but I'm very cautious because a lot of brands, they'll have 10 or 12 of these guys. You're paying them a decent amount of money and it doesn't really do much. So you really got to we had probably the second best player in the world, Kevin De Bruyne in soccer for when we launched in Europe. And, ambassadors are, once again, it goes back to everything is crowded. Every space is crowded. Everyone's doing it. So I'm sure you know this. If you see, I'll make up a name, Aaron Rodgers post about joining a brand right now, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. Okay, another guy joined a brand. Great. But if you find those right guys, and if you find it's a great way for content and it's a great way to get credibility early on. So, but I think it's good. It's part of something you have to do. It's kind of like the world of influencers now. That's just becoming the norm. It's annoying to pay for these people on Instagram to post about your product. You got to do it. Others are doing it. You got to do it. The landscape's changed so much. Even I feel like I'm talking about something 30 years ago. In 5 years, we were the first to do when in 2015, 16, 17, 18, everyone was doing paid social. That's it. We were doing podcasts, radio, Howard Stern, newspapers. We were doing newspapers, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today. So our thought was just get everywhere and go away from paid social because it was going to get expensive. We wanted to be covered. And we did radio reads, live radio reads. All that worked. Today, it's just harder. There's just customer acquisition costs. You hear that term.
You're doing, because I see it, I see the commercials, you're looking at connected TV, or TV has become a really big medium, but not everyone's going after it. Could you share with us a little bit more around what you're learning with connected TV?
So TV is interesting for us. I don't know if you've ever seen that commercial of me walking down the street in Soho.
Oh, yeah.
And that was Adweek ran something recently. That's our best commercial ever. And it's the best because it's so strange in a way. I mean, I'm walking down serious, like I've solved the world's problems, but really it was, I mean, I literally say my problem is I couldn't find a shirt designed on Untucked. It was so successful because people wanted to, you would read it, 50 tweets 2 seconds after it ran attacking me, it was great. Pass it on, share it with someone. You see this lunatic, his only problem is you can't find a shirt on Tuck. So TV was incredible for us. And in 15, 16, 17, 18, like anything else now, there's a lot of competition on TV. We still think it's a core part. You got to do it all. You got to top of the funnel. You got to drive people TV, which brings you in paid social. We don't do as much as, I know a lot of people are doing, the Netflix, Hulu stuff. It's a lot more expensive. You definitely get the customer there. I don't want to share all of our secrets of what we do and don't do, but bottom line is I do think TV is really important. We will be doing it at Greatness Wins at the right time.
And just, Chris, I'm going to sorry to interrupt, but because you jumped into Greatness Wins and I didn't get a chance to really introduce it to those who don't know it, but Greatness Wins is an athletic apparel brand.
Yep.
You're now a 2-time offender as a startup guy. I mean, it wasn't enough to get your ass almost handed to you with Untuckit. Wait, there's more. Let me do Greatness Wins, because if I know the story correctly, while you were bored at home during the COVID time, you said, hey, I know what, this is what the world needs. We need an athletic apparel company that's truly focused on quality and fit. Share a little bit more about Greatness Wins. I see you're wearing one of your hats. Exciting news story for you. It's a new chapter while you're still writing the other book.
Yep. And I, looking back, I now have 4 kids under 6. That was not in the plans when I started beginning to think about the brand. So it might have not been the best timing, but I was just thinking over the pandemic, our stores were closed. I'm thinking, what's another problem I have with apparel? And it's kind of funny. I was wearing athleisure brands to go get coffee that fit really nice, trendy. And I was wearing athletic brands, the big ones, when I went for my long run or my weightlifting, because the athleisure brands, there's just something about them. They're not meant to be worn working out. They'll tell you they are, but I was not comfortable wearing them. So I said, wow, we know the big athletic brands. There's no athletic brand that has mastered fit and mastered trendy new, the tighter shorts, the joggers. We need an athletic brand that looks very modern, that looks like athleisure, but performance first. And then I said, well, I'm big with, I gotta be differentiated. Whenever an entrepreneur comes to me and says, I have the best shirt, it's great. And it's like, everyone says they have the best shirt. What's the hook? What's the story? First of all, I love the name, Greatness Wins. People hated the name, as always, but it's such a strange name. It's not even a name. You don't name your brand Greatness Wins, right? But to me, it's a memorable name. We developed a great logo, and I said, well, how else can I make this different? Let me bring in some of the greatest athletes to ever play the game, who've had long-term relationships. Derek Jeter's with Nike, one of the most successful non-basketball athletes of all time. Misty Copeland had a huge contract with Under Armour. They knew about clothing.
And Misty Copeland, just for those who might not be familiar, she's a world-class ballerina.
Yep. She's very respected, and that was Derek's idea. Not to go to the mainstream sports, something more intriguing. So I loved how it came together. Wayne was involved early on. He's gone a different direction now, but he was involved for the first 2 years. He is a original founder. So we just had a great story, right? Untuckit meets Jeter, Misty Copeland, and we launched a year and a half ago, and we're doing great. It's very exciting. People love the story. I think that Untuckit gives people comfort in the quality. Remember, the other thing that we do differently is when I measured these athletic brands products, I'm not kidding, there was this much, you can't even see my hands, of a difference between a large short. Zero quality control. And with polyester and fabrics like that, it's even harder to get on spec. But I talked to our factories. I said, guys, once again, I am known at Untuckit as consistency of fit. You buy one pair of shorts, you can buy 20 of them. They're going to fit exactly the same. So we really care about quality. It's meant to perform. We launched women's recently, and it's exciting. And by the way, we are an athletic brand, but it's a very important differentiator. We will one day be doing tennis, soccer. The last athletic brand to come into the market was Under Armour. Now, there are cross-training brands that have come into the market.
So where would you call, like, you take Vuari, you've got, I'm sure, Nate Checketts might say, hey, hold on a second, I've got an athletic brand, although it's athleisure. So what's...
To me, those brands are athleisure. They're athleisure. Legends starts to lean towards athletics. This is my opinion, brother. I'm not trying to offend anyone. This is just my opinion. Athletic to me, which we're not there yet, brother. I want to be very clear. Athletic to me is let me give you a product that Viore will never sell. Mesh basketball shorts, right? No athleisure brands ever selling mesh basketball shorts. Now, we're going to go into tennis, right? We're going to go into soccer. We're going to go, we are going to be a true athletic brand. Under Armour, Nike, New Balance, Puma, Adidas. That's our goal. Just at a higher level of quality, slightly higher price point, more technical, higher end fabrics. But yeah, to me, I just differentiate true athletic with, you can tell in 2 seconds if you go to these ones that I'm naming, the differences. And right now, I have to admit, we don't fall all the way to that because we haven't come out with those lines. We're going mainstream to start, and then you're not going to do massive volume in the tennis. We're going into pickleball, all the true athletic sports.
Yeah, listen, I think pickleball, the fastest growing sport in the country right now. But it's like when you see what people are wearing on the pickleball court, it's like anything. It's almost like the snowboarders versus the skiers. The snowboarders wear freaking anything out there, right? The skiers got a specific outfit and look. But I think pickleball that's like game on. The pickleball short, someone has got to own that.
Yeah, you mentioned paddle? That's becoming very popular. Padel, not paddle.
We call it padel. I love the sport. There are only about 300 courts in the U.S. right now, so there's just no place to play. I live in Manhattan. I head to Brooklyn to play either Dumbo or Williamsburg.
They're opening. The guys down in Miami that I was with are opening in Hudson Yards.
Yeah. So I played there also. The Reserve. They have 4 courts. They're outdoor courts.
Okay. Right. They're already.
They're there. But they're outdoors, so not indoor, because you need 31-foot ceilings. So you need height to play the sport. Yeah. I don't want to get wrapped up. I'm super passionate about it. It's my favorite racket sport now. Tennis is dead to me.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, we just
have to play.
Eric and I were just with the owner down in Miami at Reserve Paddle, and I was watching it. I can't wait to try it.
It's wild. Hey, let's just want to wrap up on, before we go into the final part, talk a little bit more about raising capital, because you've gone through different phases. Early phase with Untuckit, some challenges around COVID. Where are you with raising capital with a mature brand like Untuckit, and then pivot over? You've got Greatness Wins, a startup, but hey, this isn't your first rodeo. So assuming, Chris, what do you need? Let's open up checkbooks. Chris is here. Talk to us a little bit more about later term raise. What do investors now want to see versus a startup?
Yeah, Untuckit, we've done it all. We've tried to sell pre-pandemic. We've raised money. We've thought about a further raise. We raised over COVID to keep us alive. Now it's a little bit, everything's changed. They won't talk to you now unless you're profitable. There's no more overvaluing companies. Listen, the valuations were just insane. You would do $100 million in revenue and be valued at $7 billion. What were they doing? I was thinking, what are you guys doing? This, and it was growth. But what they forgot, all these really smart people forgot one simple thing. They were spending $100 million in marketing. So of course, if I spent $100 million in marketing, we would be doing $700 million at revenue. So you can't do that. It's not, and you have to factor that in, that you can't just lower most companies in the last 7 years were not brands. They never became a brand. They were there spending a lot of money on marketing. And the second they stopped showing up, we've learned now people bought other products. The next guy who was spending a lot of money on marketing. So now they've realized that by getting burned a bunch of times. So now it's no more ridiculous valuations. Now, listen, I just saw an article yesterday that 2024 will be the return of e-commerce companies raising money or selling. The last 2 years, you didn't even think about selling. 3 years, 4 years because of COVID. But I'm saying the last 2 years post-COVID, you couldn't sell because multiples were so low. No one was investing, So I think 25, 24, 25, probably 25 more, you'll start to see a lot of activity. We're kind of going to wait until then. You also couldn't borrow money. I think debt is a great way to grow. And when interest rates are what they are now, that's also not an option. That should change as well. So right this second, it's a horrible time to do anything. I think but it was much worse 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. So I think we're coming out of it. For Greatness Wins was a little different. Luckily I did have the credibility with Untuckit. And when you put the names that I put out there, we actually were able to raise amazingly, fairly easily. We kind of cut it off actually. So we're in great shape there. We shouldn't have to raise for many years at Greatness Wins. for Untuckit, we will be doing something, especially to lean into some of this growth that we'll be looking at and all these, the wholesale and store expansion, ramping up marketing again. So, but that's a great opportunity for an investor because that money's going directly to growth.
So how does someone, based on where the market is today, which is still pretty tight, as you accurately called out, how does someone start a company, a pre-revenue company, or a concept? I mean, how hard is it a time to launch a new business, to be an entrepreneur?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't think you can raise money right now as a new company. I don't, first of all, this has been a wild ride for e-commerce learnings. Like I said, this whole growth to when we used to talk about in 19 with these investors, you could tell that they didn't know anything. How could they? It had only been around for 5 years, 10 years. They didn't have enough, they were kind of guessing on what to value a company. Now we know all this. We've seen everything is played out. So I don't know. I just think it's real. I think everyone's cautious with a new brand. I am when opportunities come to me. It's a very competitive world. At some point, I told you this, I really believe you're going to start to see it condensing because these brands that get really excited and say, I did 15 million last year. Well, all of a sudden they say, okay, but if we don't start making money, we're going to have to raise money. We can't raise money if we aren't making money. So let's pull back marketing. And all of a sudden that 15 becomes 12 next year. And then you're done. Like, I hate to say it. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, you saw a lot of that with the changes with iOS 14 and your ability to get to customers. You did see a flattening out of the growth curve because you could no longer buy what really you couldn't afford.
Yeah, it's so hard right now. And it's, I think those who have the strongest brand are going to survive. There's a few great ones out there right now, but a lot are going to go away. They're just not going to be able to last. It's just hard to raise money. You're not going to just be able to keep raising money because you grew.
Yeah.
You're going to have to show profitability.
As you think back, just in terms of lessons learned, now that you're 12 years post launching a business and year of launching another business, what advice would you give yourself 12 years ago based on what you now know today?
Oh gosh, so much. I wish I didn't panic as much many times. It's funny with greatness wins. I told my partner, I was like, listen, just so you know, there's going to be so much pain. You don't realize it. And recently he called me. He's like, gosh, you were right. So much goes wrong. And it doesn't bother me. I kind of expect it. Untucked, used to bother me. The wrong product comes in, it's out of spec, can't sell it, it's late, you got to fly it in, all these economic issues. You try to raise money, you can't, So I just wish I was a little more relaxed about it, enjoyed the pain. Because looking back, that was a fun time, even though it was tough. I got myself during COVID to say, you know what, this story's going to get even better if we survive. So I got to enjoy this. This is going to become the day we do sell, that'll make the story more intriguing. So I kind of turned that into a positive. But I think that's one, trying to think. There's so many things I've learned. I'm losing track right now that, that I would have done differently and am doing differently. But the one thing about us was we never overspent, right? Like even though we could have grown faster, we were pretty disciplined. And I think investors noticed that. Like, look at the stores. Like, we made one or two mistakes with stores out of 90, wish we didn't go there, wish we were very thoughtful. And I think it was because we never had a lot of cash, to be honest with you. We raised $8 million and got to where we were. I think the companies that get themselves in trouble are when they put 100 million or 40 million and they're sitting there saying, this is amazing. We have $40 million. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's make this $6 million commercial. We couldn't do those things. We had to be frugal. Our photo shoots, we never, overdid a photo shoot. We never overdid a spend on a commercial. So I think we were pretty disciplined. A lot of that I credit my partner. He was a partner at PwC, the accounting firm. So he was always very cautious on spend. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of companies make, young companies.
I also found it interesting that one thing that you give a lot of credit to your success with Untuckit was your ability to actually maintain another job for a couple of years, which provided you the funding, the actual salary that you couldn't afford to take from Untuckit. And same with your partner. So you have two guys that have day jobs that are providing an income. And this allowed you to actually build Untuckit without putting pressure on the company to support you. So that's like just a big takeaway.
So important. Even like greatness wins now. I'm not paying myself. I'm not, if Untuckit, if we had to pay ourselves, we would not have lasted because you got close and that two guys, paying ourselves just enough to live in New York City, we'd be done. Like, you got to find, a lot of people say, well, it's not possible. Well, it is possible. Find a sales job, right? There's flexibility. You can't be a trader on Wall Street and start a company, but you can find I always talk to entrepreneurs, you gotta really, it's like a blueprint. You gotta plan it. You gotta say, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. It's gonna give me this amount of time to work on Untuckit, and if I didn't do that, that saves you so much money. Listen, the end of the game, it's all about hanging around. I always say that. If you hang around, if you have a good product, you know how to market, you just gotta hang around, because it will, if you're the right company and have a story, you will make it. The problem is most of these companies can't last because they run out of money. And then you go to raise and try to convince them, no, it's going to get better if you just give me the money. They're not going to invest. So you got to find every way to preserve the capital and to hang around. That's, the advice I give.
So is it fair to say, you mentioned 8 million you've raised? What is the total amount raised to date at Untuckit? I assume you've gone beyond the 8 million.
Yeah, I don't want to release that, but we raised a little bit, not tons. We raised a little bit of money to get us through the pandemic, but we also put on more debt. That's what we got to refinance, because it's at some high interest rates.
Got it.
So we want to put some money on the books. We want to refinance our debt, and we want to grow in 2024 and 25, and then we're not thinking about selling, obviously, right now. It's just not the right time. And also, we have so much to do. I keep bringing up, like, this wholesale stuff's exciting. There's $100 million opportunity there that we have done zero in.
Yeah. I think you're right. Wholesale is, it's all part of Omni, right? It's getting product to where the customer is. They're online, they're at your store, or they're at someone else's store, a shop and shop. It can even be a shop and shop, which gives you a branding moment and more of a statement, something similar to what you might like to do yourself in your own store. So I think
you read about this. A lot of companies who left wholesale are going back in. It's all about how hard it is to acquire a customer online. So you got to find other ways to do it now.
And I think also when you look at the math on wholesale versus the math of online sales, the bottom line EBIT contribution of wholesale is pretty damn close to what you can realize online. So it's a profitable channel. Not always the easiest, because it depends on who you work with and what requirements they put around you, but it's there for the taking for sure. Hey, let's wrap up with a little bit of rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go. I know you're a wine connoisseur. Favorite wine?
Favorite wine is a wine I started drinking with my dad when I first got into wine. It's called Alzero by Giuseppe Quintarelli. It's a very unique wine. It's very expensive. Don't drink it often. If anyone knows what an Amarone is, they dry the grapes out, increase the sugar content. This is the only Cabernet Franc in the world that this process is done in. When you drink it, you don't even know what to say. It's so different. You've never had it. And then probably Bryant Family Cabernet from Napa Valley is my favorite Cabernet.
Favorite streamed TV show?
Ever? I don't know. That's tough. But one of my favorite that I would say you got to watch is Fauda, Fauda. Have you heard of that?
Not only heard of it, I love Fauda. I mean, it's a little too close to home right now with all that's going on in the world. But Fauda is amazing. Love it. And that is my number one. That's my pick.
You can't shut it off. You're just going to keep playing it and playing it. And then right this second, I'm watching Jack Reacher. I really like that show. And did you ever watch any of the Fargos? The new Fargo is great.
Really? I was waiting for you to say, Chris, have you watched Drops of God?
Yes, I did. Very good.
I mean,
really good.
You're a wine guy. I thought for sure you were going to roll into Drops of God.
No, I tend to like more action stuff as my favorites, but Drops of God.
I got you. Fauda is good. If you like Fauda, you would also like Tehran.
Oh, unbelievable.
Awesome.
And by the way, that brings me back to the days when I loved 24 with Jack Bauer, that's the same type of thing as Fauda, where you get
I got your number. Favorite store or brand besides Untuckit?
It's amazing. I literally don't wear anything but Untuckit and Greatness Wins. And it's because, I mean, literally, it just feels weird not to. It feels.
All right. Then I'm going to challenge that and say, what sneaker are you wearing?
It's funny. Now I wear, we're going to make a sneaker at Greatness Wins. So I wear unbranded sneakers now because I don't want to support. I don't know. It's stupid. I guess, listen. Everyone owns. I run in on running. It's an on running.
Yep.
Those are my running sneakers. I like them the best. But we are going to develop the next great performance sneaker, which I'm very excited about.
I'm gonna keep my eye out for it.
Eric was very successful in the sneaker world, and believe it or not, with Nike. So,
where would you most like to live for vacation?
I'm an Italy guy. I love Italy, all parts of it. Up in Piedmont for Barolos. We just went to Puglia last year, way down south. This year, we're going back to the Chianti, Tuscany region. And I like France, but wherever you can eat all these other countries, these great, beautiful countries, the food, I always want the food. And you don't really get that unless you're Spain, you get great food, but I need the food and wine because that's pretty much all I do when I'm on the trip. So
Love it. Last question. Who would you most like to meet?
gosh,
Dead or alive? I'll throw that one. I'll broaden it.
I guess I'm a music guy, so it's not, I'm a huge country Eric Church fan. I love music. I mean, I love music. I was a big Dave Matthews fan over the years, and I've become a Eric Church, Kenny Chesney. So I'd probably want to meet those.
Well, with that, we'll land today's Flight of the Retail Pilot. Chris, it was great to have you. Learned a lot, and congratulations on your journey.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this. Appreciate the time.
Chris has been generous enough to offer all of you listening a special promo for both Untuckit and Greatness Wins. Real simple, Ken25. This offer is good for 1 week from the time we drop this podcast.